The 251st definition of consciousness. I have read that there are 250 vivid definitions for consciousness. This will become the 251st, having delved deeply into the fundamental principles of our thinking and having developed a schematic model of the thinking system in the past. This is my stab at elucidating what consciousness is. Let's follow my explanation. Other than a few traits essential for our survival, our brain is virtually blank when we are born. From the time of birth, the 5 sensory organs keep bombarding signals to our brain. These muddled inputs create nothing but confusion. Hence, the primary task of the infant's brain is to develop the brain cell networks, that I call them the thinking programs, to understand the sensory signals and bring clarity to what is being received. If this is not sorted first, obviously our lives will be doomed forever. The brain inherits a set of tools like BIOS found in early computers that facilitates the development of thinking programs required for our physical and mental functional needs. The infants have to learn thinking by developing their own thinking programs. Refinements and updating of the programs are part of the development process. It's a gradual process. For example, an infant takes about 3 months to establish a proper vision program to see the objects clearly. Turning over, crawling, standing, walking, etc. are the staged results produced by the development of motor skill programs, integrating brain and body. As we grow, the motor skill programs run almost automatically, requiring minimum thinking. The memory we develop is an intrinsic part of the thinking system that retains important past information. Thinking programs always utilize memory for reference. The sense of a self, or the idea of I, sets in the brain very early in life due to feelings experienced from the thinking programs and retention of information in chronological order. A significant transformation takes place in our life journey when a language is acquired around 10 to 12 months of age. Language opens a vast avenue, enabling us to comprehend others' ideas and express our own ideas to others. Our perception of the world is shaped by the perspectives of others. Every word and object in the universe have been introduced to our knowledge through the contributions of others. For instance, we refer to a table as a table because someone designated it as such at some point in time. This principle applies to both subjective and objective aspects we come across. Acquiring a language exposes the developing child to a multitude of ideas originating from various sources, including parents, clergy, teachers, society, friends, literature, and media. In contrast to the infancy period, these external ideas exert a profound impact in conditioning our thinking processes. The thinking framework developed without exposure to diverse experiences and logical reasoning at childhood becomes the foundation upon which we construct our adult psyche. Hence, our conditioned adult psyche thus invariably carries biases when we produce thoughts, emotions, and actions. Our thinking system comprises 4 fundamental sectors. The first sector is constantly receptive to receive inputs. The second sector processes these inputs immediately by the thinking programs, linking our memory, which is the third sector, to generate outputs. The fourth sector represents the outputs, in the form of thoughts, emotions, and action initiators. Often, our thoughts get fed back into the system as inputs for further processing, creating loops or thought cycles. Though we call the thinking system the mind a noun, it is technically wrong, as the mind is action happening in the brain, a verb to be precise. The inputs received through the 5 senses play a dominant role by providing us the cognition of real versus non-real status of the inputs to their best abilities. Our thinking system can take multiple sensory inputs and process all of them at the same time to produce an output. This is why we can play or take part in a baseball game, but when it comes to the 6th stream of input, that is, receiving an idea of another person, we can process only one input at a time to produce a thought. That's why we cannot hear what 2 people are saying at the same time. It's my opinion that the thinking programs that run in receiving and processing the sensory signals continuously create the feeling of consciousness, contradicting the idea that consciousness is required to run these programs. In support of this hypothesis, we will examine our thinking system under various life scenarios. 1. Assume we are in deep sleep or anesthetized. Under this condition, none of the thinking programs or the 6 input receiving avenues will be available to execute. As a result, the feeling of I will disappear, along with feelings of consciousness. If you believe your mind or soul exists outside the brain, this situation will disprove that belief. 2. The dreaming state. Under this condition, the 5 sensory signals as well as external ideas will be shut off. If this is the reality of the condition, how do we see dreams? What happens is our thinking programs will still run without the above inputs. We will fall asleep when we gradually get to a state of having no thoughts. But even when the thinking programs run without the external inputs in sleep, by the virtue of its design, the thinking process still accesses the memory for reference. Accessing the memory continuously can stimulate it to trigger the release of some information to the thinking system to create a thought. Once a thought is generated, that is sufficient to continue the thoughts generating process with looping back actions. During the thoughts looping cycles, the memory will keep imparting fresh information to keep the thinking continuous. This is what we experience as dreams. The feelings that these thoughts generate and the participation of the memory create the presence of I in dreams. However, because the external sensory signals that were not part of the processing system in the dream, the thoughts we generate wouldn't go through the reality check. This causes us to see and experience completely wild thoughts like floating and driving brakeless cars sometimes. Our memory has real as well as fictional information that can lead to vivid dreams. In dream situations, the sensory input processing programs commence running with the sensory inputs provided internally. That's why we see, hear and feel in a dream and even activate physical actions at times. During a dream, the feeling of I as well as the feeling of consciousness exist because of the active state of the thinking processes. 3. Awake state. Under this situation, all the thinking programs process the signals fed by the 5 senses and the external and internal feeds. In here, the programs that process the sensory signals perform the validity or reality status of the signals. We feel consciousness and the feeling of I because of the thinking programs in action. I trust the above analysis explains the rationale I have on consciousness. While some of the prevailing views on consciousness express our feelings as the result of consciousness, consciousness is, in fact, just the opposite. The feelings we experience as consciousness are merely the byproduct of thinking programs in action. I hope my logic makes sense. Thanks for watching.